If I asked you to name the most useless form in Dragon Ball, I'm sure you're all thinking of different answers. But what's actually the most useless form in the entire series? Maybe they even all have a purpose when looked at narratively. And let me just get this out of the way immediately. It isn't Super Saiyan 3. Now, I play up my hate for Super Saiyan 3 because I think it's funny, but my dislike for it almost entirely comes from what it did to Goku's character in the Buu Saga, and the fact that it feels very forced into the narrative when compared to the foreshadowed Super Saiyan and Super Saiyan 2 forms. I think people read the word overrated in my title for my Super Saiyan 3 video and thought I actually said useless or worst, but I just think it's overrated, especially among the casual fanbase due to how cool they think it looks and what it does in the non-canon Dragon Ball Z movies. At the very least, though, it isn't useless. Whether or not I think it was actually necessary from a writing perspective, the form did buy enough time for Trunks to get the Dragon Radar from Capsule Corp. Now, did they end up using or needing the radar later in the arc? Well, no. But that's not the form's fault. Similarly, Gotenks also uses Super Saiyan 3 in his fight with Super Buu after exiting the time chamber. Aside from the form being required for Gotenks and Piccolo to escape at all, which stops Buu from destroying the Earth while they're betrayed and trapped, Super Saiyan 3 also makes Gotenks strong enough to successfully stall Buu, allowing Gohan's potential to finish being unlocked and for him to arrive on Earth. Though I will say Buu also allowed that to happen, so I could only give Super Saiyan 3 a little bit of credit here. That said, for the sake of this video, I will include Dragon Ball Daima when applicable, and Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta gets Super Saiyan 3's only notable win in a work with direct, heavy Toriyama involvement, so that counts for something. So this should make it clear what my criteria is for a useful form. I'm looking for narrative significance and/or accomplishments. Having one or the other should give a form enough to escape being called the most useless form in the series, and accomplishments don't specifically mean wins, like I showed with Super Saiyan 3. I also want to focus on prominent characters, so no Chief Moganayan battle mode from Dragon Ball Super Episode 2 or things like it. For the next form, let me go from defending a form I dislike to defending a form I love. Super Saiyan God. I'm sure a lot of you think this form has no accomplishments, and narratively it has no foreshadowing or build-up, as well as no narrative connection to Goku as a character, so it must be useless. I mean, it literally loses its debut fight before getting fully replaced one arc later, but that isn't exactly true. I think people forget this, but Super Saiyan, a form praised for its build-up, has all of its foreshadowing happen over the course of its introductory arc. I've seen a lot of people say the form is foreshadowed in the Saiyan Saga, but that just doesn't happen. The only line about Super Saiyans in that arc is Nappa using the term to mean something else entirely, calling any human Saiyan hybrid a Super Saiyan, which is clearly retconned by the time of the Frieza Saga. Obviously, Battle of Gods was originally a movie, and even its arc version is less than 20 episodes long, so it doesn't have a lot of time to build up the form, but the build-up is still there, even if it's not nearly as good as the build-up for Super Saiyan on Namek. My point is, foreshadowing and build-up can happen in the arc that a form is introduced, but more importantly, this form is pretty symbolic for Goku. In the Battle of Gods movie, and in one line of the Dragon Ball Super arc version, Goku is a bit upset that he had to rely on others to get so powerful, annoyed that the strength didn't come from himself. What Goku doesn't realize is that the people involved in the ritual only exist and can participate in the ritual successfully because of him. Of course, his sons and his unborn grandchild are directly linked to him, but Vegeta changing as a person and settling down on Earth, starting a family of his own, are also due to Goku's influence. Goku's actions created a world where 5 other righteous Saiyans could even exist. So when they pour their hearts, not their power, into Goku, it's as if he's being given back what he gave to all of them so he can protect them from the god of destruction. So does this make it not useless? Well, personally, I'd say character significance is more important than anything when it comes to a transformation in a story, but it does actually have some overlooked accomplishments. In Battle of Gods, the form successfully stops Beerus from destroying the Earth. There is a world where the form doesn't live up to Beerus' expectations, or it isn't possible to create at all, and he destroys the Earth right then and there. But the form growing stronger, allowing Goku to show off his tenacity, and even making Goku stronger in his base form to the point that he didn't need the transformation for the second half of the fight because he became one with it, is a pretty big accomplishment. Something that's also partially a narrative accomplishment is this form expanded the world of Dragon Ball by blowing open the power ceiling we previously thought to exist in Dragon Ball Z. Back to combat accomplishments though, in the manga, Super Saiyan God is used a good amount to give Goku and Vegeta incredible power boosts without using the same stamina as Super Saiyan Blue. They generally use the form to go in and out of Super Saiyan Blue, like in Goku's fight with Hit and Vegeta's fight with Goku Black. back. You could actually say it just fully replaces Super Saiyan 3, with the anime seemingly implying that Super Saiyan God is just more efficient than Super Saiyan 3 as well as Super Saiyan Blue. So its purpose as a powerful, efficient transformation fills the role that forms like Super Saiyan and Super Saiyan 2 had in late Dragon Ball Z. Speaking of Super Saiyan Blue, I know I need to mention it, but it's not really worth talking about for too long because it just isn't a useless form. It's been around too long and at the very least has been used to buy time or even just straight up win fights. It's a form that's pushed enemies to evolve in order to surpass it, and the form evolved in ways similar to Super Saiyan in the original manga. While I think it's fair to say perfected Super Saiyan Blue may have been a bit too short-lived, it served a purpose in the fight with Merge Zamasu in the Dragon Ball Super manga. Blue Evolution, on the other hand, is something I'll have to talk about in a bit more detail. Blue Evolution first appeared in the Dragon Ball Super anime, then was adapted in a slightly different way by Toyotaro for the Dragon Ball Super manga. In both continuities, the form is unlocked during the Tournament of Power, with the anime specifically framing this as Vegeta's limit-breaking form that he achieves on his own path to power, while Goku goes after Ultra Instinct. I think people fairly dislike this form since it's just not that interesting. In the anime especially, it's a retread of Super Saiyan Grade 2, but with an emotional awakening that's usually reserved for entirely new forms, not variations or, for lack of a better term, evolutions. That being said, the generic way Vegeta unlocks it isn't terrible, and it's at least a little different in the manga as it's brought about by his frustration of always falling behind Goku, somewhat paralleling the anime filler scene of how Vegeta unlocked Super Saiyan in the first place. More importantly than anything though, this is Vegeta's main form in the Moro arc of the Dragon Ball Super manga, and it, along with his new abilities, forces the story to progress. He's also clearly using the form to amplify his Force Spirit Fission at the end of the arc to stop Moro from getting an instant win, buying them time for the actual victory to happen, which is not a lot, but it's definitely not useless. And if I'm talking about what's basically Super Saiyan Blue Grade 2, we have to talk about the other Super Saiyan grades. Obviously, Grade 1 isn't useless, and Grade 4 was seemingly essential to surpassing the Super Saiyan wall, something Grade 2 and Grade 3 thought they did, but actually didn't. So let's talk about those two. Super Saiyan Grade 2 is a stronger version of Super Saiyan Grade 1, but it still has the same drawbacks as Super Saiyan Grade 1, like emotional instability, restlessness, and seemingly some amount of stamina drain. Grade 3 further exacerbates those issues and adds on the downside of slower speed, making it effectively useless in combat. While Grade 2 has the combat accomplishment of being able to beat Semi-Perfect Cell had it not been Vegeta fighting him, Grade 3 has nothing, right? Surely this is the most useless form in all of Dragon Ball. Well, I've always held the belief that Grade 2 and even Grade 3 exist to serve a purpose narratively. Goku has to find these forms just like Trunks and Vegeta did in order to see their flaws. They are a necessary stepping stone to surpassing the Super Saiyan wall and overcoming what was thought to be the greatest power in the universe. So while Super Saiyan Grade 3's best accomplishment in battle is future Trunks using it as a distraction during his spar with Vegeta in the Dragon Ball Super anime, its narrative importance shouldn't be overlooked. But it's honestly the biggest contender for most useless form that I've discussed so far. While we're talking about future Trunks, I'm sure most of you were expecting this one, Super Saiyan Rage, the form that appears out of nowhere with no explanation before or after its introduction and doesn't win a single fight. This form is anime exclusive and was probably made to sell merchandise, but it does have a small explanation. In that spar with Vegeta I mentioned before, Trunks hones in on the blue energy that makes the power of Super Saiyan Blue, even understanding it to be a god's power using context clues. At first, this made Trunks complacent that his father and Goku would take care of Goku Black for him, but after Vegeta tells him he needs to look beyond the threat in front of him, Trunks resolves himself to get stronger on his own and even surpass his father. So a form like Super Saiyan Rage that mixes a Super Saiyan aura with a blue aura could be seen as Trunks' solution to growing stronger after training with Vegeta and trying to replicate Super Saiyan Blue. It's very thinly written, but it is there, and its transformation scene where Trunks rejects having committed sins is pretty damn cool. Importantly, when it comes to accomplishments in battle, it allowed Goku and Vegeta to escape as Trunks was able to hold off Goku Black and Zamasu. It's a mediocre transformation at best, but I think calling it the most useless form would be a bit much. Now, give me a second to rapid fire through a few forms that have some haters and detractors, but are far from useless. Ultimate Gohan bought time for Goku to return to life, and more importantly for Vegeta to get to Earth in the Buu Saga. Even more impressively, in Super, it gets some wins in the Tournament of Power power, with the manga version having Ultimate Gohan draw with Kefla. Narratively, a form that represents Gohan's hidden potential is about as on the nose as a transformation can get, so I think it works, even if it feels a bit like a retread of what happens in the Cell Saga in some minor ways. And if we're talking about potential, I should mention Frieza. I can already see the comments saying that Frieza's original transformations made him weaker, but I don't think that has anything to do with their usefulness, since they're specifically made to help Frieza not lose control. Out of all of his suppression transformations, his third form has the least on-screen accomplishments, though it does beat everyone present at the fight with ease, so it's not like it did absolutely nothing. Frieza just wanted to show off his true form and true power, even when he didn't need to at that exact moment. At least Frost got to use the form for a little bit in Dragon Ball Super. Speaking of what happened on Namek, Zarbon has a very weird transformation, in hindsight at least. His monster form is sometimes called his true form, as I discussed in my video on all the transformations in Dragon Ball, but like I did there, I'll consider it a transformation rather than his base form. The weird thing about this form is that it's hyped up as a massive increase in power by several characters, when if you actually do the math, it has to be less than a 2x multiplier. That being said, it did beat Vegeta, and narratively, it's used to set up both Frieza and Goku transforming later in the arc. So I think it isn't useless, even if it's a pretty weak power boost. I mean, it still got Zarbon a win over Vegeta in their first fight after all. And finally, we could talk about the actual contenders for the most useless form in Dragon Ball. The first is the Great Namekian form. This is the form that Piccolo uses to grow huge, and had this video been made a few years ago, I'd actually say it's the most useless form in the series. It has no real power gains, and its only use in combat is taken advantage of by Goku to rescue Kami, which is really the only reason the form exists in the story. That's still technically a narrative use, but it feels weird to use that in the form's favor. Luckily, we live in a post-Dragon Ball Super superhero world, and in that movie, Piccolo uses the Great Namekian form in conjunction with Orange Piccolo to better hold off and fight Cell Max, which is a crucial move that actually leads to the fight ending in a victory against the artificial life form. So while the form may not provide a true power benefit, its size and leverage still greatly improves combat ability, especially when the opponent is of a similar size as well.
Hey, congrats, man, you're not useless anymore.
Next, we have Buu with Piccolo, Goten, and Trunks absorbed, or as some people call the form, Buu Iccolo. This form only happened after Goten and Trunks defused inside of Buu, so Piccolo became the dominant absorption in Buu's body. This form is a drastic reduction in Buu's power and allowed Goku to leave Buu to Gohan instead of having to fuse with him. If this had been the end of Buu, then maybe there could be an argument for this being the most useless form in the series, but it wasn't. Add on the fact that this form was an accident and purposefully bad, as well as having some foreshadowing, and I think it works narratively at least. There's also the fact that Piccolo's intelligence, which is the specific reason Buu absorbed him, is what leads to him planning ahead in the heat of the moment and absorbing Gohan, which is likely even worse than had the kid stayed fused inside of Buu. All in all, even if it was meant to be a useless form, it ended up being extremely good for Buu and justified him absorbing Piccolo in the first place. Now we're finally here, the form I consider to be the most useless form in all of Dragon Ball. And funny enough, it also has to do with Piccolo. To me, the most useless form in Dragon Ball is Piccolo's Potential Unleashed form, or as I like to call it, Piccolo. This form was supposed to let Piccolo close the gap between him and Gamma 2, an opponent he thinks is on the level of Goku and Vegeta. But instead, he just ended up losing slightly less badly to the android and was still going to be killed as his own power just wasn't enough. But I think the worst part about this form is the fact that it didn't even need to be a form. Goku, Krillin, Kid Gohan, and even Dende had their potentials unlocked, with the latter three being in the same way Piccolo did, but they didn't result in transformations for the characters. By creating a new form, it does subvert the viewer's expectations about what Shenron meant when he spoke about throwing in a little bit extra, as that form could be seen as the extra since it's something that didn't happen in the past, but the cost of that likely unintentional subversion is the creation of the most useless form in all of Dragon Ball, a form that couldn't beat the foe it was acquired to beat, and is instantly replaced by a far more powerful and narratively significant form, Orange Piccolo. If you want to think about it in a slightly funny way, Shenron gave Piccolo the orange form because he knew that he didn't have potential like that on his own, which is almost as sad as it is funny. So yeah, Piccolo is the most useless form in all of Dragon Ball. Thank you to all the channel members on the screen behind me right now. Also wanted to add in that I'm gonna start streaming again more regularly over on twitch.tv/Carthu. If you're interested, it is gonna be like Dragon Ball stuff, and thank you so very much for watching.